Hello everyone, my name is Josh, and this is Whimsical and Interesting Musings, bringing you musings both whimsical and interesting every day, all year round. And today, I'm going to be doing another book review, and earlier today I did a book review on Martina Cole's Faceless, which was an incredible book, and if you haven't checked out that particular video, go watch it, it's on my channel. And I'm actually going to talk about another book that has this same type of theme as Faceless, and it is the works of Mandasue Heller. Instead of doing one particular book review, I'm going to review the majority of the books by Mandasue Heller, the ones that I've read, which is Forget Me Not, The Front, and a book called Afraid, which I took out at the library. And Mandasue Heller, upon first glance, seems like her work at first glance seems to be from the point of view of it seems like it's in the same umbrella as Martina Cole's work for the majority of the time. She has a lot of the same motifs. She writes about a crime novel from the point of view of the criminal, or kind of talking about the criminal enterprise. But Martina Cole has a bit of an interesting take on things because she tells these very gritty and very harrowing stories from the point of view of characters who don't really get a voice in Martina Cole's stories, or as much of a voice in Martina Cole's stories as a lot of people tend to think. Yes, there are children in Martina Cole's stories, but they don't have an actual point of view. They don't actually have a overwhelming impact on how things happen, or if what their take on this very violent and very gritty world is. Whereas in the case of Mandasue Heller, she writes from the point of view of teenagers and preteens. And that's a very interesting take because Martina Cole's stories are by and large feminist novels. They are, when I say feminist novels, I mean novels that are told mostly from the point of view of women in a man's world. And she's very good at it. She's been doing it for years. She's had 25 years at playing the game of being the author, and she has made bestseller after bestseller after bestseller. And she's incredible at it, and she does a very good job. Mandasue Heller is one of those writers who also does a very good job, and she plays the role of the author very well with how she tells these stories from the point of view of teenagers. And it's a very weird perspective, but her stories could be considered YA or young adult. But the way Mandasue Heller writes it, she still adds swear words in her stories. They still have characters say things like, pardon my language, but fuck, shit, and all sorts of other things. But in the case of most YAs, they don't have swear words at all. They sometimes very much like to skirt over the idea of actually having characters swear, or they try to have inventive ways of having characters swear without them actually swearing, like in the case of James Dashner's The Maze Runner series. But in the case of Mandasue Heller, she still manages to create quite a compelling narrative. And what the majority of these stories do is they do focus on the dark side of human nature, which is the idea of giving in to the fact that you're in a very impoverished world where there's a lot of poverty. It's a lot of the storylines tend to take place in one council estate, and they mostly focus around people who aren't that very well off. They live in flats, they have, very minimal income, and it's desperation that propels them to do the things that they do. Like, say, for example, in the novel Forget Me Not, the main character, Lisa's mother, Pat Noon, with an E, is forced to become a prostitute because she has no other ways of earning an income. She basically has to stay at home and look after a child, but she can't look after a child if she can't feed her child and, pay the bills like electricity, gas, and what have you. So she has no real qualifications, she has no means of supporting herself, so she decides to take up prostitution. And it's like what I said in the in my Faces review earlier today, where she just simply didn't have a choice, and these characters don't have a choice when it comes to their, when it comes to their situation, they have no choice but to dive into crime. That's why in a lot of these films directed by Noel Clarke, the Kidulthood and the Adulthood series, tend to focus on people who are very desperate, these kids who are essentially indulging in crime because they have no other choice. No one's supporting them. They either are raised by single parents who can't support themselves, let alone children, and they also have no other real influences, and that makes it very easy for them to come under the wing of predatory individuals, people who are using these kids for malicious intent and to basically corrupt them and tarnish their souls to violence, drug addiction, and all sorts of other things. So Mandasue Heller pretty much tackles this in spades. But what makes her stories very compelling to me is that they are told from the point of view of teenagers. And the teenage life is a very difficult life because you often, have a lot of pressure put on you at that age. You have to often, do a lot of stuff. You've got to, go to school. You've got to revise. You've got to, make sure that you get a good work experience so that you can get a decent job, get good qualifications, attend exams, spend time with your friends and have healthy relationships. But then you've also got to not go too far to the point where you end up pregnant. And there's a lot of pressures being put on teenagers, and they show that pressure right from the word go, right out of the gate. And Mandasue Heller is just brilliant at writing teenagers, and she really does a good job, because a lot of the stuff that she writes, I kept thinking to myself, do teenagers really talk like this? Because I've actually been a teenager, and I know that a lot of teenagers do have certain phrases and certain ideas, certain slang words and ideas, but I've never heard anyone say the word ace before until I've actually, seen shows like Waterloo Road and things like that. But then again, these are written by women who are much older than the target audience of that particular show. And I will do a overview of that, but I will be tackling something else. And if you're a Avatar The Last Airbender fan, I'm going to be doing a overview of Avatar The Last Airbender when I get round to it, because I really am excited to just talk about that show on my channel and actually bait a lot of people who are actually huge fans of it. And if you aren't a fan of it, then maybe this will be a good opportunity for you to actually check out the series. It's on Netflix, so you can just check it out right then and there. But for now, let's talk about Mandasue Heller's work. And a lot of her books are very harrowing. They do deal with a lot of very difficult situations like drug addiction, underage sex, and all sorts of other things. But what really is at the heart of this particular story, a lot of her stories, is they always kind of, the women who are the main focus points of these particular stories, especially in something like The Front or Forget Me Not, is the girls or the women who are, in these particular scenarios where they are under the pressure of kind of performing for these men who are in some cases much older than they are. They're at least a good 10 years. They tend to operate under the illusion or are manipulated into thinking that this is the road to maturity, that if they have sex and they have children, or if they are married to a guy who literally, treats them badly, that's kind of their way, that's kind of like their rite of passage almost. But it's absolutely not the case, and I think Mandasue Heller does a very good job of showing what grooming can do to women, and especially teenagers. And I think that's what's really great for her, is she actually kind of is saying, no, don't do this. This isn't the way to go. And she proves that time and time again. Like in the novel Forget Me Not, the main character Lisa is falling in love with a guy who very slowly is starting to show that he's quite bonkers. And he literally isn't just bonkers, he's downright psychotic. Because Forget Me Not is a serial killer story where the serial killer is hunting these women in the crescent that the main character lives, and is killing them, mutilating them, and leaving a forget-me-not flower in the open in the openings in their innards, in their mutilated states. And it's really horrible, and it's really nasty and not very nice. But what's very interesting is He isn't a very sane guy, but he is a guy who is a bit of a dreamboat, according to her. He is her prince, according to her. And she kind of lives in a fantasy world where she wants to escape. Yes, she has a good relationship with her mum, but she feels very pressured. She feels kind of like a lot of these men who are at her local community college and at her school, at these local community centres and at her school, are actually, either always interested in someone else, like one of her friends, or some other classmate, but they're never interested in her. So she kind of feels like, these are all boys. I'm going to go after a man and see what he can give me, what he can offer me. And when a man saves her life from getting horribly humiliated, and you can fill in the blanks there, she immediately sees him as literally her knight in shining armor. So she literally sees him as her prince, as her everything. And she is completely utterly in a fantasy world where they're going to live happily ever after. They're going to have a nice house, and he's going to have a job, and I'm going to be at home looking after the baby and all these other things. And she really does feel like it is a dream come true to have this guy in her life. But very slowly, he starts to groom her into thinking that if she goes home to her mum where she will be safe, she's just going to be drunk and out unconscious on her bed, or she's going to be, having sex with someone because she's a prostitute. And I kept thinking to myself, that's not what the mum does. Even if she were to do that, she's not doing it to be malicious to her son or her daughter, but she's doing it to kind of say, well, okay, I have no choice. I have no real qualifications. I don't have any real means to hold down an actual job, so I have to do this because there's no reasonable way, because of the estate that she's in. The estate that she's in, she can't actually afford to go anywhere else, or even go to a job that she actually has qualifications for. So she feels like she doesn't have a choice, and the people that she picks up aren't very nice people anyway. So Lisa does feel reasonably left out, and she feels like when she starts talking to Benjamin, the guy who actually saves her life, she begins to see that he's actually listening to her, or he's giving her the illusion that he's listening to her. But that's how predators, and that's how online catfishers get inside your head. That's how they make you think all these random and very kind of insane thoughts that you're going to have this happily ever after and all these other things. That's how they tap into your imagination. That's how they tap into your mental state, is they are able to kind of give you the illusion that someone's listening, that someone's there to support you and to help you, but in reality they're just kind of doing it for their own personal gain, and what they want from you is just your control, your sense of feeling vulnerable and feeling like your desperation, your clinging to them. It is what they want. Your absolute, complete and utter trust and certainty in them is what they want, so that they can just basically strip you down emotionally and say, well, you're nothing without me, you need me, and things like that. That's classic, groomer, classic, abusive spouse 101 right there. And he pushes all those buttons, and he tries to make her think that they're going to have this very wonderful life together, but very slowly she starts to act wise, and she knows exactly what's going on, and it leads to a very brutal scene where a child has to kill someone in order to save her life. And that really kind of hit home for me at the end of Forget Me Not. But it's a really good book. It was very, hard hitting. But what's really great about Mandasue Heller's novels is she is the master of a page turner. She knows how to really make the pages keep on turning and really kind of keep you invested and hooked in the story. And because it's told from the point of view of teenagers, and in some cases children, in the case of Forget Me Not, the main character is 12 years old, and Ben's in his 20s. Yeah, that's really not good, but at the same time, it was intentionally done because Mandasue Heller wanted to prove that, these people can be anywhere and they can actually do anything to you, and they can make you feel like you're safe with them and that you're happy. And it's basically showing the flawed aspect of wanting to mature, which is basically experiencing all the things like drink and drugs and sex and all the rest of it, But you don't have to experience these things to experience maturity. You just need to be responsible, and you need to know when to say no. And that's something that really is kind of at the heart of all after school specials, like when someone offers you a cigarette or a can of alcohol. Try it. It's a cigarette or a joint or whatever. Say no, or if someone offers you a needle, say no, or say no to other things. Like if they want to take you somewhere and they want to do something inappropriate with you, and you don't feel comfortable, then just say no. So yeah, that's something that I really like about Mandasue Heller's books. Is she does feel like it comes from a very authentic and very kind of a very kind of humane place, that she's able to tap into these insecurities of teenagers so well, and she's really good at it. In fact, I think she kind of did what Emma Donoghue did with Room, before Room was even published. And Emma Donoghue is a great writer anyway, but I feel like Mandasue Heller is up there with the likes of Emma Donoghue in regards to how she's able to show a very adult and very gritty world through the eyes of a child and through the eyes of a teenager in a way that very much feels very authentic and very much distinctly her own. And the fact that she pretty much tells these stories from the point of view of very vulnerable women who are in this very kind of in this very desperate situation, you really do see why they have to do things that they do to survive. And in the case of this book, the front, the main character of Sue is dating a man called Maul, who is a not very nice guy. He's 32 and she's about 16. But he's a total a-hole to her. He hates her. He literally, he literally gives her a smack across the face if she runs a bath and it's too hot. Like little petty things like that really do kind of add flavour to the fact that, I'm so waiting for the moment when this character dies or he gets arrested, because he's not a very nice person. In fact, it felt like a very Martina Cole villain, in the sense that he's not very nice. He's very kind of selfish, and he only really spins those yarns just so he can get what he wants out of the entire situation, which is to take her innocence, take her virginity, basically. And that's what he wants. And when he gets what he wants out of her, he will be able to control her, and whatever he asks her to do, she will happily do it, because he knows that that's the buttons that he needs to push in order to control her. These characters want to take complete and utter agency away from the main protagonists, and Maul is able to do that so successfully, but he's able to manipulate the main character into thinking that even her best friend is a total a-hole, a total asshole, and a total, not very nice person and not a very trusting person. But that's what he does, and he does this to her quite a lot, and he knows how to turn those gears in her head and actually make her think, this is the sort of thing that I need to stand up for myself, or me and Maul are the victims, my friend's the predator, and things like that. When in reality it's the other way round. It's the friend and her who's the ones being preyed upon, and it's Maul who's the predator. And it really is kind of amazing. And of course, in the book, the front, there's a little bit more to the story than just these three characters. But what's really good about her books is she's able to just really give you such an engaging story. And in the front, this was a very ambitious novel in its own right, because it's simply about a group of people who are trying to rob a supermarket, and they do it in the cover of darkness, and it ends up going wrong. Basically, they do it off the cuff. They don't really have a plan. They just these group of friends just decide to rob this supermarket, and they end up killing the owner of the shop, the person running the shop at the time. And he has some connections to some very shady people, and it's these shady people on top of the police that want to speak to these characters and want to figure out why they want to rob this place. And the faces in the smoke, as Martina Cole referred to them as, are also wanting to talk to them for another reason, and that's not to basically get them into safety, it's to actually kill them. So that adds an extra layer of fuel to the fire. But it's a very engaging read, and I really found myself enjoying this book particularly. But I enjoy all of Martina, all Mandasue Heller's books because of how gripping and engaging they can be. And I'd love to read more books by her because she is still writing. She's still, continuing to write these incredible stories and really kind of do it from a very unique perspective. Afraid was the one where I really kind of felt myself thinking, I am actually really worried for this protagonist. Like, I really do, hope that she makes it out okay and that she's all right. But what's really great about Mandasue Heller as a storyteller is she's able to just really could have just make you feel for these characters and really make you relate to them because they're not in a very good place, even though they do have nice parents, like in the case of Pat Noon or Lisa in Forget Me Not with Pat Noon, her mum. And in Afraid, she has nice parents. One parent has, mental health problems and continuously thinks that her husband's having an affair, but her father's very good to her and loves her dearly and wants to make sure that she's safe and protected. But when she gets involved in this very complicated web of deception and deceit, it actually turns into a bit of a Harlan Coben type novel where there's tons of twists and turns, but we're already seeing the twists and turns happen from her perspective, where it's done in one location in a manor house, and an abandoned manor house where it's very dilapidated, but it's more, they're just squatting in it until something, happens. But she clearly can see that she knows that something might be wrong, but he continuously, manipulates her and tells her, I'm someone you can trust. I'm someone that you can, open yourself up to and, feel comfortable with. And that's the sort of strings that he pulls to try to, influence her and make her think, oh, I'm actually saying this person's a good guy, when in reality he's just using her to get what he wants again. So she has literally perfected the art of depicting how grooming works in psychological thrillers and really kind of, putting it in a situation where it makes sense for these characters to think these things and to think in this way. Because that's what grooming is. The whole entire idea is it's meant to be distorting your reality. And what better way to distort your reality than to think that the person who's the least trustworthy is the person that you should trust. And she's a master at it, and she's continuously, continued to write really good work ever since. So I think if you're a huge fan of Martina Cole, please check out the works of Mandasue Heller. She's a fantastic writer. And if you can, I would highly recommend you check out the works of Kimberly Chambers as well. I think she's also in the same genre as Mandasue Heller and Martina Cole. In fact, Kimberly Chambers and Mandasue Heller are actually very close friends. So these two authors are definitely worth picking up and checking out. I think it's really good, and yeah, that's all I really have to say for this particular video. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Whimsical and Interesting Musings. If you are excited for the new Avatar: The Last Airbender overview, I would like to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you have anything to say about Mandasue Heller's books and which ones are your favourite, I would love to hear what they are in the comments. And if you like this video, please like it. Leave a like, everyone. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so. Oh, have a good day, and I hope you're all well. Bye.